It is 6:45. We've talked a lot about post-traumatic stress disorder lately. 2 weeks ago, a CBC report found increasing need for PTSD support for jurors in traumatic cases. And this week, the defense lawyer for Shane Lund, a serial child molester in Aurelia, discussed the profound impact the case had on him after Lund was deemed a dangerous offender and sentenced to prison indefinitely. But Charity Fleming feels despite the widespread coverage, most people don't know what the disorder actually is. Charity co-owns Qualia Counseling. She's also a social worker who's worked with people who have PTSD, and she joins us on the phone now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and thank you so much for your coverage in terms of mental health. I apologize. My voice is going. I woke up with this morning, so I apologize to you and listeners for that.
Well, we appreciate you still joining us. I know a lot of people who are sick right now, actually.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is, Charity, that we are missing when it comes to understanding PTSD?
Well, I've really been thinking about this over the last several days especially, but looking at the cases, as you mentioned, and, really analyzing myself, why is it that, we don't have more services, or from my perspective, why don't we have more services? Why are our societal expectations still a little bit behind in terms of what people will need in terms of services or treatment for these symptoms? And I make that assumption knowing what PTSD is. So one of the major defining characteristics of what PTSD is an exposure to trauma. And so that definition of trauma is for some people being involved in a life-threatening situation. However, for others, it can be simply witnessing a life-threatening situation or vicariously experiencing that life-threatening situation through the story or sharing of someone else's situation or experience. So I think simply by the definition of what trauma is, there should be more expectation that in situations like, brutal or severe criminal activity, that of course jurors or anybody involved in hearing or witnessing that story is going to be affected by this. By the very premise of what trauma is and PTSD is, there should be that expectation. And I know that there's, unfortunately, although there's a rise in the destigmatization of mental health, there's so many people who still are living with those symptoms who are not diagnosed or treated. And a few examples that I have through my years of working with people with PTSD is one is working with women. So for a long time, I worked with women who were victims of sexual assault and abuse. And of course, I got fully immersed in that, and also in the literature and the research regarding that. And women are twice as likely to acquire PTSD as men. And there's extremely more likelihood that they're going to live with chronic PTSD symptoms. And it's as high as 53 to 58% of women who will live with chronic symptoms of PTSD.
Why do you think it is that someone who didn't directly experience the trauma, who just did so vicariously, would also suffer from it? Is it just because of the exposure day in, day out in a court trial, for example?
I think so. I mean, it depends. Definitely, it depends on the severity or the duration or intensity of which they witness that or experience that. But these are brutal images. And whether we, are in the situation ourselves and see, those images and have that be part of our direct experience, or whether we experience that vicariously by seeing pictures of it, or, hearing the stories of it, and depending on the intensity of it, of course, it's going to affect that person.
So there's the vicarious exposure. And then I'm also wondering, because you say as well that it isn't just direct exposure to something really violent, for example, that may have happened to you. It could have been even something that wasn't so violent. Maybe it was even just a minor car collision, or it could be the experience of, and I'm not saying that this is minor, but it could be something like verbal, like a bullying situation.
Yeah,
how does that?
exactly.
Yeah, how does that cause PTSD?
So PTSD, again, the definition of trauma is that people are feeling unsafe or threatened for their, physical, life, or emotional safety. So there's a spectrum, and often people just dismiss the other symptoms or mild or moderate symptoms of PTSD or other mental health disorders, when really they shouldn't be dismissed. So somebody who experiences bullying on a regular basis, maybe a child who feels threatened, maybe physically threatened, whether they're being pushed or punched or hit or just verbally attacked in some way. I know I work with a lot of adolescents, and there's a lot of cyberbullying. There's people that actually say, go kill yourself on, the internet or texting or things like that. And that is a threat to somebody's physical or emotional safety. And so there's so many people who actually experience things that could be labeled as trauma, whether it's bullying, car collisions, traumatic labor and delivery, miscarriages, health problems. We all experience things that are threatening to our self in some way. And the estimates are as high as 70% of people who experience some sort of traumatic incident in their life. Now, only 20% of those people would go on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder and be diagnosed with it, but it doesn't mean that there's not other people suffering with those symptoms.
Well, Charity, thank you so much for speaking with us, and take care.
Thank you so much. And if people want to check out more information, we can check out our website, qualiacounseling.com, and we've posted information about PTSD on there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charity Fleming is a social worker with Qualia Counseling, and she's worked extensively with people who have PTSD.